Hello, I'm Thomas Hare, Chief Content Officer of the Performance Driven Marketing Institute, a not-for-profit trade association that serves companies in the performance and direct consumer marketing world. It's been a bit, about 4 weeks, but welcome to the latest episode of Take 20, created by the PDMI's Brand Response Council. These 20-minute live conversations featuring leaders in the performance marketing world, speaking about the hottest topics in the industry, are scheduled twice a month. Before we get to today's conversation, a housekeeping note: we'll be addressing any questions that you have at the end of the session, but don't hesitate to ask them. There's a questions tab on your control panel, and you can type and send your questions in. We'll be collecting them in the background. We'll try to get to as many as possible in the final moments of the episode. Today's episode, Creative Content Integrations, is set to take a look at how storylines and content are so crucial to search, engagement, brand identity, and customer attraction, meaning performance brands need to be able to link their own products with stories. They need to engage today's consumers in a way that goes beyond the transaction. Today, we're excited to welcome this trio of creative experts: Urban Legends Jack Barrett, Envision Response's Sean Fay, and Script to Screen's Ken Kerry, to share their thoughts on these topics and more. As always, PDMI Brand Response Council Chair Chris Foster of Modern Postcard is here to guide the conversation. Welcome, team. Take it away.
Thomas, thank you so much. And gents, welcome. So glad to have, we got some new folks here for Take 20s. Welcome, Jack, and welcome, Sean, and welcome back, Ken. We're so excited to have the three of you here. Like Tom had mentioned, storytelling now is something that everyone talks about, and in the brand response commercials and brand response advertising, storytelling isn't new, but it's different now, right? Entire generations have grown up with cartoons or products that were also stories, right? Either, talk about My Little Pony or He-Man or Lego. Not only is it a product, but entire storylines have been built around the product. And so people growing up are used to that. And so as adults, we look at brands like REI or Peloton or BMW making films of their own. They're not just selling product, they're actually making films that have characters and some type of storyline. And brands understand that stories can be linked to products and vice versa. And now TikTok's a brand new media channel, can immediately show a product while telling a real life story at the same time with an actual customer telling that story. So it's a brand new world about how content and creative strategy works for products to create those storylines. And so we're here with experts talking about some of these topics and issues and questions. And I think, Jack, I'm going to start with you. Welcome in.
Thank you.
I guess one question that I would have is, and as someone who creates these, how do you actually say, all right, how do I look at different lengths of video content? Whether it's a 3-minute YouTube video or a 30-second spot or a 15-second pre-roll, how do you talk with clients about the story you want to take and then crafting different aspects of that story for the actual media channels?
Well, I think the great thing about any story is that it's not necessarily length dependent. So for example, you can see a still photograph that tells a huge story. And so what we try to do at Urban Legend is take length into consideration, but make sure when we consider length that we're including all of the elements that are needed to tell a story. There's some basic elements that are integral to making a story interesting to somebody. So knowing the length is really important into pacing that story. But I think what we always remind ourselves is the length isn't the determining factor of the story engagement. So sometimes the more time we have, the deeper story we can tell, and that's an advantage. But backing the story into the length of the channel is something that we is part of the crafting process.
Mm-hmm. It's I think a wonderful insight where stories aren't length dependent. What I love about that is not only does it apply to the work that you guys do, but that's a universal statement, right? You can have really tight poems that tell a wonderful story in just a page, or you could have War and Peace, which tells a great story over thousands of pages, right? The length actually doesn't matter. That's really interesting. And I guess, Ken, I'll ask you a question now, because you've been in the industry, you've got some longevity in terms of what you have seen the industry be like 10, 15 years ago versus what it is now. And one question that came up in last PDMI was someone said, are the days of, but wait, there's more, gone in the wake of some of this new generation of savvy customers?
I don't think so, but in certain areas, for sure not. In certain areas, absolutely, you don't want to do that. And that goes to the generational thing. But I wanted to back up a little bit to where Jack was saying this, because we look at everything that we look at. There are 8 channels of distribution for anything that we do with a client. So it's not just a commercial. It is 8 channels, and they all have to be contextual to the platform. Going back to the time frame, right? You're going to want 15 seconds, maybe on a reel, or whatever the thing is. So you have to kind of figure out your story based on the time that's contextual to the platform, right? It's not just time specifically, because someone looking at YouTube has a different mindset than on Facebook. YouTube, I'm looking to learn how. Facebook, I'm voyeuristic in a way, right? So there's that aspect of it. So I think when you're looking for a very specific ROI right then and there, you have to ask for the sale. Now, you don't have to yell and sell, and you don't have to say, but wait, there's more. But you have to, if you're saying I'm spending X amount of dollars and I need a return on this investment right here and now, you have to do that. Versus, I just want to get you off this platform onto my website, and I can tell you any story I want, right? At that point, which is, I think, more of where it's going, simply because the longer form is getting shorter. There's less and less inventory, but make no mistake, the long form inventory, even though it's shrinking, it's extremely valuable. It works really, really well for specific products, for specific audiences. So no, it's not over, but yes, pick your battles of where you're going to do it.
I think that is so poignantly stated, where you said the channel is a vehicle to move someone to a destination, right? Where the actual ad's job isn't to sell. The ad's job is to move them to another place where they can learn and investigate a little bit more. And I know that you do have to ask for the sale. I totally get it. I guess, Sean, my question for you would be, where have you seen some really good examples of asking for the sale, but making it seem like the person's not being sold to?
Right. First of all, I'm going to just rewind a little bit and just acknowledge Jack and Ken's really salient points, which is that story transcends the channel and the length. So, but so that's the first thing. The second thing that's really important that Ken mentioned is that there are all these different channels, and you as a marketer need to understand them and understand their lengths and understand the mindset of your buyer persona, your customer, when they're watching those lengths. So those are 2 critical foundational things when it comes to creating story and just the whole idea of creative strategy and content integration. But going to your question, and I also want to just acknowledge that on the but wait, there's more, that was a language that was kind of part of a cultural shift from fairgrounds to infomercials and spots. And that's still a thing. But again, to Ken's point, it depends on the channel. Is it a fun kind of sort of presentation like that? And good examples of those would be like Fiber Fix or the Squatty Potty, where it's hardcore pitching, problem solution, demonstration, wow. However, it's pushing you to, as Ken says, that go further to the website and to that's where you can transact and get the offer and that kind of thing. Back to your question about some really good examples of spots that sell without you feeling sold to. I'm just going to name a couple of my favorites. And actually, I'm going to go way back. Everybody remembers the Apple 1984 spot, right? Talk about an incredible immersive story. You're watching that and you're just engrossed. And the first thing you're saying is, I'm not those drones. I'm that woman with the hammer. But at the end of that spot, there's one singular thought that you had, and that was, damn, Apple must be really good. And then, of course, if they had a call to action to go onto the website, they would have been flooded with interest. More recently,
one word being said,
without
Right.
one freaking word being said, right? We all love that ad. And now, that being said, and that's a great example of a branding ad that had a powerful engagement with the viewer that got lots and lots of interest. Okay, going to your point though, another great example would be these Gerber Knives films. So they've created this great storylines. There's several of them that one of them is called Hello Trouble, and it's just a really rich, gravelly voice talking about the idea of adventure. And the topic is Hello Trouble, and you're seeing these people that are living life on the very edge, the bleeding edge of adventure, and interspersed throughout the spot, you have these shots that are very relevant to the topic at hand, like it's a fisherman cutting a line, it's a person working on building something, and they're whittling something. And so it's basically a spot about these knives, but it's really about the adventure. And you find yourself going, I want to be those guys. That's the life I want. And at the end of it, your feelings about that product and that brand are, this must be good. I want to go on to the website.
Sure.
So anyways, those are a couple of examples. There's lots more.
Well, what I really like what you mentioned, Sean, is that you didn't call them ads. Guys, he called them films.
Yeah.
Right? You call them films. And so I think that there's a mindset that perhaps might be different now when you're thinking about, well, I'm making a film. It just happens to be about a product, or talk about a product or the people interacting with a product, but it's a film.
Can I jump in with with a specific example of that? But if
Yes,
you want to go
please.
somewhere else, Chris.
No, go for it, Ken.
So-
What do you got?
So it's interesting is because we have a product that we've launched last year, and although it is the selling of the product on the beginning, right? But when you go to the website, we end up telling more of the story. But what we have done is we've created these films because every time we introduce a new product to our community or to our email list, it's not, hey, get 10% off. It's, here's the next version of that product. We're going to be in Bimini, and we're going to take you on this fishing adventure out in Bimini, out in the Atlantic Ocean, right? And we're going to use our product, and we're going to catch a bunch of fish, but we're going to have this amazing experience. And if that is something you like, then you might consider this product. We never tell you to buy it. We never, to Sean's point, there's no discussion of, act now and get this. It's like, if you want to be part of this, if you want to be, feel like this is your cup of tea, then you're going to want to be doing that. So we take those films and we remarket them to our database, and it's like a over 50% conversion.
Sure.
And not even an ad. And I didn't pay 1 penny for the advertising time.
No, I love that. And what it does is it shows the repurposing of the film, right? So that you can use it as a direct marketing channel embedded in a message, in an email, or other things.
Sure.
And that's an interesting example, Ken, of a new product that's created, so that you went into it with a filmmaker's mentality when you launched the product. I guess, Jack, I'll go back to you. What if I'm an existing brand, right? I'm not starting off being a filmy storyline. I have this history. How do existing established products best create a new story so that they're seen in a new way?
Well, the great thing again about story is every product or service, there's a story in there somewhere. It can either be a customer story, or a founder story, or a purpose story, a reason to believe. Everyone should know that we can all find a story in there. I think the trick is to make sure that story is wrapped in strategy. So finding the link to the product or service. So what we try to do is first start with strategy, which is making sure people understand what the service or product is, why they need it, and where to get it. And then from there, we wrap a story around it, and we search for those stories, whether, like I said, whether it's a purpose story, or a founder story, or a customer story. Those are sort of some basic basic different genres. And then I think the next step is to build story elements around that. And we're not so worried, going back to your last question, about whether people know that it's an ad or they're being sold to. I think if you can relay a tangible human experience, people don't really care about that. They just want to have feel it. And so we make sure that a story has a couple of main things, which is identifiable characters of some kind, because people care about people, even if it's not people, farmer's dog, or all these different things, but essentially an identifiable character, authentic emotion, a moment or a significant moment, and then little details about those. And if you wrap that around a creative strategy, I think you almost have to make tough decisions on which story to tell. They just start pouring out of products.
You know, it's interesting, Jack, when you say moment in storytelling, it's just conflict. It's that moment of conflict, right?
Yeah, they have different names, like middle end, and
right.
If you go back to the purest of a story, right? There's
Novel.
a hero, there's a conflict, there's.
Yeah, those are all the same things exist, but what's different, I think, for all of us on this panel and everybody listening, is that those need to be rooted in strategy, because story without strategy is entertainment. That's just entertainment.
Right.
And so
What you and Sean said is perfect. It's not story for story's sake, right? It's how you setting it up.
Yeah, I love that. And you had mentioned briefly the farmer's dog. I think that we had talked about this before the call, but just so everyone on this Take 20 understands, for the farmer's dog was a spot in the Super Bowl, and it was, I think, now rated as one of the most highly rated ads of this past season. And Jack, you mentioned character, emotion, and moment, and story with the strategy, and then Ken, you mentioned conflict. What I love about that ad is that the conflict in it is just time, right? The inescapable conflict of time and a dog growing older. The character clearly is the customer, which is the daughter, and the dog's also a customer, because what they did in that ad is they took a young girl, she's 10, 12, she gets a new puppy. Through those huge, incredibly powerful formative years as she goes through life and adolescence and then college and getting married and having a baby, the dog is with her. And it shows her perspective of having the dog. And at the very end of the ad, it flips it around and shows the dog's perspective, so that the product itself has both characters. It has the girl and the dog. And what I really liked about what you just said, Jack, was that story without strategy is just entertainment. Is that it's a way in which products and brands can almost be more creative, as long as the story they're telling is strategic around what they serve and whom they serve. Then they can go be as creative and emotional and as cinematic as they want.
At the end of the day, there always has to be an action you need that person to do.
Exactly.
Right.
What do you want to do? It's those three strategies. Who it's for, why I need it, and where to get it. Those are really what I think separate advertising from entertainment.
And I think that's the foundation of performance marketing, is having a story that leads to a purpose, which is to ultimately, have sales and revenues and transactions.
Right. So Sean, I guess I'll ask you as we start wrapping this up, because we're already at the 20-minute mark. There's a new generation of consumers. They are the savviest consumers in the history of mankind, right? Generation Z is now going to be the largest consumer group in the country. They're going to be a third of our workforce in about 2 to 3 years. They're approaching that engagement differently than you or I or other folks. How are stories going to change for Generation Z and then coming up Generation Alpha?
Good question. I have 3 Gen Z kids that are 20 to 24, so.
Me too.
Yeah, exactly. How is it going to change? Yeah, it's a great question. Obviously, I start with where are they consuming their content? You have to start with that. And you might automatically think, well, it's all social media or YouTube, like you said, how to, or going to TikTok for those satisfying videos, whether they be useful or entertaining or funny. But then you have to look at the streaming channels, and even Netflix is looking at advertisements, and connected TV and Hulu. There's a lot of really great spots that are going out there. So again, I would just look at where that audience is viewing, and then I think the approach has to be, it just has to continue to rest on the fundamentals. Where's the relatable character, as Jack says? What is the emotional connection? What is in it for the viewer? Why should they care? I think that if anything, you just have to, you can't just try to get them to buy your stuff. You have to make it really meaningful to them. And it might not be always the very first time that you connect with them. That's why a lot of the longer format videos on YouTube are 3 minutes for the launch videos, and then they go to 60 seconds. You take Dr. Squatch, they're longer, and then they go to shorter ones. Anyways, I'm sure the guys could add to this, but that's my perspective. And like Ken's example, you have a series of touch points, that where you're connecting with people. The story doesn't end with just the first, you buy it and then you're gone. It's more like, wait, we want you to be a lifetime customer. This is a relationship we're building
Talk about
with
old
you.
School, right, Sean?
Yeah, right.
Old school, right?
That's right.
And can I just add, and I know Sean well enough to the fact that he and myself and Jack and everybody, we're gonna research. We're gonna immerse ourselves in what that market is doing. So we don't think we know. We have to look what they're doing so we can understand how to communicate to them.
That's right. We use tools like foundation documents that ask every question. What are the rebuttals? What's the product story, the founder story, the origin story? And sometimes you have to go into the factory, like the old Capodastro bar. It's like they had to go into the piano factory to discover that the piano is heavier. It's because of this bar. This bar is what makes that piano better. That's a great old school ad, but it's so, like, to Ken's point, you uncover all that rich information. So, part of storytelling is being really inquisitive and interested.
Right. That's wonderful. What fantastic nuggets of stuff. I've written pages of notes, so I hope that the audience was able to write pages to it. And speaking of YouTube, this will be on our YouTube channel on the PDMI Take 20. And we are already at 11:25, so we're really open for questions. So Thomas, as always, we could spend all day talking about this stuff, but we've got to wrap it up. We have questions from the audience.
Yeah, we do. We have a couple of good ones. Just making sure you guys can hear me.
Yep.
All right, cool. This one's for Ken. With Ken's statement of there being 8 channels to promote your message to an audience, there's three-part question. What are those 8 channels? Is there an order of operations when it comes to using those channels? And are there 1 or 2 marquee channels among those 8?
So look at the 8 as linear, connected, YouTube, Google search, Amazon, and email marketing. They're all channels, right? And you're going to communicate. I mean, you go to Amazon, if you're not putting up a product video to tell the story about your product, you're only hurting yourself, right? So those are the channels, and we look at it from like what
and social. Your 8th one was social, yeah.
And I throw that in with YouTube.
So
that's the way we look at it. And to Jack's point, it's like, what's the strategy that you're doing to tell your story in each one of those places first? And then to Sean's point, what do you want them to do once you get them there, right? So those are what we look at. And we really, man, if you're not thinking that way today, boy, you're going to be squeezed out of this really quickly. And I'm sorry, what was Thomas, what was the other question about?
There was hold on, let me go back. I think an order of operations when it comes to these, and I think you got into that. But are there 1 or 2 marquee channels you consider among those 8?
Depends on what you're trying to do. It depends on what you're trying to do. If I'm trying to sell something to a younger, maybe upper 30s generation, and I'm not really finding them place, I would use TikTok as my first place to go, or maybe YouTube or somewhere else. But if I'm doing, guys, we all know if we're going to be selling, homeowners insurance or something like that, we're going to go linear first, and we're going to trickle down. So it really depends on what you're saying, what you're selling, what's the customer you're after. That determines where you start.
One thing to keep in mind also is that you might start small, right? And you can start small online and social. And when you catch fire with something and something's working, you can start looking at other types of channels as magnifying glasses to that success. TV, of course, being the big reach. So, once you start to get success online, we have a lot of clients that are like, okay, we're starting to do well on online. We want to go to TV because we want that big reach. We want to really start make the traffic funnel, even wider, because we know we can convert. We figured out the conversion model.
Yeah. It's getting those digital native companies to actually realize there's something beyond digital, right?
That's right.
Great. And then the other question that came in, with the advent of streaming and CTV, are any of you finding a need to tweak creative based on the particular outlet while trying to maintain a through line to your storytelling?
Yeah, that's a for sure. Yeah, I think connected TV came up, and I feel just personally, just as a viewer, the tonality in a connected TV commercial break is different than a linear TV break. It just feels different. So I keep that in mind. There's also small technical things. Some of the connected TV, like if you're watching Hulu, they sort of are a little bit chunky on the way in and way out. So we have to make sure, just technically, like the back end doesn't get clipped, be prepared. Things like that happen. So we do consider a little bit. The story might not change broadly, but we seriously consider the channel that's going to play on with how it will perceive. The other thing is, most important about that is how much is heard or seen. You got to be prepared for people turning the channel down, the volume down or off.
Right.
And so those are very important considerations. Yeah.
The other part of that, what's interesting is because connected TV is just addressable, right? You're addressing a certain audience that wants to watch a certain show on a streaming platform. That person, whether it's male or female, is going to be a certain age group. It's going to have certain desires. So you better be paying attention if you're going to be, putting in an ad on Sex and the City and in Hulu. You know who you're talking to. So don't try to conquer the world, right? Right, Jack?
That's right.
Well, what I also love about that too, from a craftsmanship standpoint, is when you watch linear TV, you expect the commercial breaks. There's a cadence to it. There's a familiarity of when the story's going to pause, and you're going to now watch some ads. Where it's connected TV, it's not something that's anticipated. So the ad has to come in, and it's interruptive, and you have to soften that entryway in. That's a brilliant insight.
Tonality is so important, because the other thing about a linear commercial break is you get bombarded with all these different, they're A to Z. Some of them are emotional, some of them are high intensity. And so the viewer's a little bit flattened from it. But on a connected TV ad, we found you have to be careful coming in too heavily emotional, let's say. If somebody's, because the tone and the mood might be looking for something fun and playful. And so fall flat. So we just a little bit aware of the tonality. That's a broad term, but the tonality for that channel, especially with connected TV.
Interesting.
Well, hey guys, thank you so much for the wisdom today. Our take 20 took 30 today, and there's a good reason for that. Jack, Ken, Sean, thank you very much for your efforts, and always, Chris, thank you for wrangling the conversation in a great direction. For those of you with us after 4 weeks away, it should be no surprise that our schedule for Take 20 is active in the coming weeks. We'll actually have 3 Wednesdays in a row. Our next scheduled opportunity to get together is next Wednesday, March 1st, when we will finally get to the second part of a 2-part series on data automation. This episode focusing on privacy, fraud, and marketplace aspects of automation. Please visit thepdmi.com/take-20 to register for the webinar and check out our upcoming schedule. In addition, registration and hotel reservations remain open for PDMI East, our next in-person event, which is now less than 4 weeks away. March 20 through 22 at the Eden Rock Miami Beach. Many of you might know that our original deadline for our discounted hotel block was yesterday, but a great response by the industry and some savvy negotiations by our leader, John Yarrington, with the hotel. We've been able to open up some more rooms and open up an extra week of time for you to get into our discounted hotel room block at $329 a night, which is a great deal. Miami at spring break is out of this world when it comes to hotel prices. So visit the PDMI.com/PDMI-East for more information and to grab your badge today. Thank you again for checking out this episode of the Take 20. We appreciate it. Be well. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.